Hello and welcome to the Customizable Game Grid tutorial and walkthrough. I am the grid's author, Oliver Liebert. The Customizable Game Grid is a tool made for Unity, which allows you to make grid-based maps, games, and path-filing algorithms, etc. This is an example of a usage of the grid to make procedural maps for games. Here we have a grid 2D object, which contains a grid 2D mono. This is the easiest way to make grids in the Customizable Game Grid. Here we have an inspector to change the properties of the grid. Here we can change the axis of where it generates. So we can make it generate on a completely different axis. Here we can change the size, which will change the amount of grid points on the grid. We can also show grid lines, which easily visualizes each individual grid point. Below the grid 2D mono, we have an object spawner, which has the ability to spawn objects on the grid 2D. So here we have an object group 0, which spawns grass planes on all indices. So this will take this object, which is a mesh prefab, and it will spawn it on every single grid point. Object group 1 has trees, which is set to specified indices. So each specified index in this array will be where a tree spawns. To see which index is which on the grid, you can turn on Show Grid Indices in Editor. This will show from the bottom left corner is 0, and it will go up from there. In the specified indices mode and also the specified coordinates mode, you can also turn on visualization mode, which allows you to basically paint objects on the grid. This makes it very easy to make lots of changes very quickly. Object group 2 includes stones, which also specified indices. This is the big stones you see here. And the mushrooms and tall grass are totally random. So if we regenerate the grid by clicking the Spawn Objects button, it will be randomized again. So this is a very easy way to make procedural maps that change every time you play the game. If you change the object spawner's mode to at awake, it will remove all of the objects and it will instead spawn them when the game starts. And as you can see, the grass position changes every time I play. Another use for the grid is for grid-based games, such as RPGs. Here we have 3 players, 1 enemy, and we can click on players and press W, S, and D to move them. Each individual player and enemy is aligned to specific grid points. And there are easy methods inside of the grid 2D and the grid 2D mono, which can be used to get the neighboring grid points. Now let's go over how to make a grid. In this example, I'm going to be making a grid 2D mono, but you can also create grid 2D standalone without any mono behaviors inside C# classes. So first you create a new empty game object, and then you add the grid 2D mono to it. Here we can see the different settings we went through earlier. The axis, we can specify dimensions. And if we want to, we can add an object spawner here. So here in the object spawner, I've added a new object group, which I have set to cubes. And I have set the spawning mode to specified indices. So here I can turn on visualization mode, which will select indices visually. And now I can just draw on the grid to place objects. So if we want to make, for example, a maze, that is super simple with this. We simply draw out the maze how we want it, and you don't have to worry about placing them in the right spot, because every single object will be aligned to a grid point. So this was a super simple tutorial and walkthrough of the grid system. For more information, you can refer to the documentation and also the comments and inline documentation inside the code. If you have any questions, feature requests, or bug reports, then please don't hesitate to contact me on my email address on the Unity Asset Store page. I wish you good luck in your game development journey. Talk to you soon.